Let me help you out real quick. Just real right quick. Lala. Yeah. Um, White people have sickle cell. White people in America definitely have sickle cell. And the reason for that is that sickle cell is a hereditary illness, which means that your parents, two of them, must pass it down to you. Now, the reason why you think that because she's white, she can't have sickle cell is because the United States government, along with the rest of the Western world that was very much invested in slavery during the 1700s, the 1800s, and still profiting off of that racism that slavery brought in the 1900s, 20th century, however you want to put that. It behooved them to say that sickle cell was a black disease. It helped them to keep the status quo and the idea that black and white people were not mixing. Black people are a created people. We are indigenous to the continental US, along with many people in the Caribbean. We are we are an indigenous people. We have far more in common genetically with white Europeans, specifically the English, the Irish, the Scottish, the French, and the Spaniards, than we do with anybody on the continent of Africa. Be clear, I don't look like this. This hair don't look like this because I just got lucky. No, baby girl. All of this is a genetic makeup of Irish, French, British, African, and Afro Cuban, Black Indian ancestry. hmm But understand something, sickle cell is the world's first discovered molecular illness. Sickle cell has been studied and looked at for well over 200 years on this continent alone. Why? Because sickle cell is an evolutionary trait that the body developed in order to protect itself from malaria and viruses just like it, which means that whereas your cells will live 90 to 120 days, my cells live 20 days max, because that means that a virus such as malaria, HIV, COVID, they're not going to survive very well in a host that is unhospitable. So what that means is that as people were being transported from Africa across the Atlantic and dropped off from one island to another before making it to this massive continent, they were being studied. White people were trying to figure out, why aren't they dying from malaria, but we are? They were doing autopsies on slaves, noticing that we had diseased organs, missing organs, and this sparked their curiosity. We were chattel. And just like any good farmer, you know which hog and which heifer produce the best offspring. And if you were a good slave owner, you knew which woman and which man were going to give you the best and the strongest offspring. So it behooved you to study them. Sickle cell went from 1840 all the way up to 1953. It did not go more than a decade without them discovering something about it. They discovered it was a molecular illness. They discovered it was a hemolytic illness. They discovered that it was hereditary. They discovered that it um, it was caused pain. They discovered that the red blood cells were breaking down and it was some problem with the oxygen molecule. They did all of this between 1840 and 1953. And they kept it a black illness solely for the purpose of driving their political stance on federalized segregation of the races. If sickle cell stays a Black American illness that is hereditary, if we don't recognize that white people have sickle cell, because see, if you was white and you had sickle cell, then that meant that somewhere down the line, by this American westernized ideology, you got black blood mixed in. And by our one drop rule, then that meant that your white behind was now black. So it helped to keep the lie going. And for you to buy into this in 2024, when sickle cell has two therapies that will eventually lead to a true cure, is absolutely ridiculous. You are ridiculous. How dare you? How dare you? You have no idea what it means to live with the most disrespected, disregarded, discriminated against illness on the planet. And it's one thing to live with that and be part of the population that is the most disrespected, disregarded, and unprotected demographic in the world's most powerful country. It's completely different to live with that illness and be a part of the supposed most privileged demographic. You owe her a great apology. You owe us an apology, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I suggest you go get the book on Amazon called Sickle Cell Disease. It's the textbook. Go read it. Learn about it. Come back. Have a discussion. Because we're not doing this no more. Absolutely not. You trifling. I'm done.